the idea is basically just to put out music I like. I mean, what it comes down to is every record I put out, even if I sold 0 copies, the main reason I did it is because I wanted this thing on vinyl. And, ideally we would sell a ton of them, but that's just not realistic a lot of the times.
Adam, hey, how's it going?
Doing well, Andy. How you been?
Good. Hey, thanks so much for coming to the Question the Answers podcast, man. It's really great to talk to you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Yeah. So Adam Gecking is the founder and, basically the person at Say 10 Records and Skateboards out of Richmond, Virginia. A label and skateboard company that he founded about 2007, 2008. I'm glad to have you on here to really talk about what you've got going on into the future and a little bit about the history of the label. Just to kind of jump right into it, tell me about Say 10 Records and tell me about why you started it and what you're doing.
Well, I mean, the label actually started when I was running a record store called Volume in Virginia Beach. We were doing free shows 3-4 nights a week a lot of the time. We had everyone play acoustic in there, from Anti-Flag to Lucero and Bayside, to we did a lot of free or donation-based shows for touring bands, as well as bands that were just local. And basically in the summertime, sometimes it was up to 5 and 6 nights a week. And it was just a lot of fun. It was a place to go. It was like a good time period for me. And one of the bands that played my old record store was called The Riot Before. And at the time, they were not on a label. They'd put out something on Quote Unquote Records, which was owned by Jeff Rosenstock. And basically they were looking for somebody to help them move forward. And they played my record store and just blew me away. And I had to figure out a way to put out their album, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because before that, I used to own a different record label up until 2004. And I started that one called VMS Records from the late 90s till 2004. And I stopped doing that. The only things people would have heard of on that would have been that band No Cash, which is like a Choking Victim-esque or Crack Rock Steady-esque type of band. I loved them. They were great. And then I put out a triple CD for the Pie Tasters back in the day.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, because the Pie Tasters are from Virginia, right? Yeah,
they're from the Northern Virginia, DC area. And some of them even live in Baltimore, so.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, man, the Pie Tasters are a band that I remember on a previous episode, I was talking to somebody about it, and like such an undersung ska band from that whole era where, they were on all the tours and stuff, but I just don't never think that they really got as much credit as they deserved, because they were just so good,
They were one of the best bands at the time. I remember I saw them twice with the Bouncing Souls, and I remember seeing them the first time I saw them, they opened up for the Bouncing Souls, and then in the mid 90s, I remember the Bouncing Souls were opening up for them at a couple times, and it was just awesome because it was like I can't remember who was on the tour, but it was just an awesome tour. It was like I just remember the Bouncing Souls and the Pie Tasters were the headliners. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I remember the first show I saw with them was the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones in San Francisco. And I actually caught them a couple times with the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones in San Francisco. And it was just always such a great time. The last time I saw them was actually at Punk Rock Bowling. This last Punk Rock Bowling that happened, they were on the secondary stage, and they crushed it, man. They hadn't missed a step at all. And I remember being so amped to see them because I had heard all the stories about how they would kind of get pretty loose, before playing. And the singer would just come out and he was just had his drink and kind of, got that swagger going on and just having a great time. So yeah, they were always so much fun. But but Say 10, man, I mean, you've been putting out a bunch of great releases, and you also kind of function as a distro too, right?
A little bit, yeah. I've been trying to figure out how to keep that going with everything moving forward, because I normally sell a lot more stuff for the distro when I do live events. And 2020 has clearly been the year of no live events.
Right.
So that's something that I have to expand on, and I want to expand my online store and online presence eventually, but I've kind of been slowly paring it down now, and I plan on expanding it more once I get my new website up and running.
Got it. Yeah, because I actually bought some records from you not that long ago from your distro, because I remember I've been looking for that Against Me new wave record for so long, and it had been sold out, and you like ping me, you're like, hey, I've got some of those, and I'm like, sweet. So I snagged one. But I mean, gosh, like over the last year, you've put out some really cool releases like Will Wood, the Wolf Face. Dude, that record's so good. So
it is. They're tragically underrated. It's one of those bands that when you see them live, they'll blow your mind. And I'm actually wearing a Wolf Face shirt right now.
Nice.
But no, they're so good, and they're good, but they're a gimmicky band. And I think a lot of people want to just write them off as a gimmicky band rather than looking into how good the music actually is.
Yeah, totally. Like I actually caught them at Fest. I think both years that Tsunami Bomb played, I think they played the same years, and I managed to catch part of their set, and I was like, what the hell is this? And then because I had never heard of them, because I don't even know if they've ever been to the West Coast or not, but yeah, caught their set, was really intrigued. I was like, dude, these guys are like dressing up like wolves, and like that's interesting. And then you included that record when I made the order, and then I listened to it. I was like, this is really fucking good. Like I honestly just didn't even put two and two together. And then after giving it a solid spin, like I was like, dude, I'm an instant fan. So I'm stoked on that band. And everyone should check out Wolfface immediately. It's a very good record. And buy it from Say 10. Yeah.
Or just listen to it on Spotify. I'll settle for that. I'll take the 3 cents. Come on.
There you go. Yeah. But yeah, what are some other releases that you put out in the last couple of years that are like highlights for you?
I mean, I was really excited when we did that Love Equals Death Static Age split. That made me very happy because I know they hadn't done anything in a while, and so that was amazing. And we've been talking to them about doing a back catalog piece for them.
Okay.
Yeah. So, which would be all the early pre-Fat recordings.
Right. Yeah. Like, so, I'm friends with those guys, and like, it's funny. So funny story about Love Equals Death. I actually tried out to be in that band, and, they were looking for a new guitar player. And, I've been friends with Dom from Tsunami Bomb for a very long time. Yeah. And, he had gone on and started Love Equals Death with Sean, and, they were looking for a guitar player. And I was like, hey man, like I play guitar, I'd be down to try it out. So came down, tried out. I didn't get the role, but that would have been really, I mean, shit, they, obviously went on and did the whole thing with Fat Records. And then, met their untimely demise. And then, and then I was really surprised actually to hear about them coming back and doing something. But I gave that new EP a solid listen. Like the songs are good. I really like the Static Age songs. Like that's a band that I was not really aware of. I think I remember hearing the name a little bit, but hadn't really ever listened to them. But I really like that stuff too. So that was kind of an interesting pairing because Love Equals Death has got like that more like kind of straight ahead, like more punk rock sound. And the Static Age is a little bit more like almost like darkish alt, like heavy indie rock, kind of thing,
Yeah, and I think the Static Age is great as well. Like those guys have been doing it for years, actually. And Andrew Paley's been doing, I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm awful with last names, but basically he's been doing his solo stuff for a while as well, and it's very similar. And it's really great stuff. I mean, it's like super mellow and down, but it's good music to just chill to. And I've been a fan for a while. So whenever they hit me up, or their manager got in touch with me because I've known him for years, and he asked if I wanted to help out with the United States side of things. I was very excited about it for both bands essentially.
Nice. Yeah, and so you actually partner up with other labels pretty often, right?
I do that for like Europe and stuff like that. It's normally for bands that I'm trying to help out or they're trying to get stuff in the United States for. And I've tried it with US labels, and it's really hard because we're all in the same area, so we end up taking sales from each other. And not that it's never about the sale or the money. It's more or less if there's 300 copies in the United States or 500 copies in the United States, if everyone's pitching it to the same market, there's, you know what I mean? It's only the same amount of people are going to buy it.
You know, one of the things that I run into with my label is that I don't have any kind of physical distribution, you know? So for me to get records into stores really means that I have to do consignment most of the time. Every now and again, you know, I'm lucky and I'll get like a record store that I'm friendly with and they'll just buy a couple of copies, you know, outright, which is great. But more often than not, it's more of a consignment deal. And, you know, it gets so hard to keep track of like everything, especially when you're spreading it out to like 20 different stores. And so ideally you'd have a distributor do that for you. But when you don't have that luxury, it might be beneficial to have, say, another, you know, US label helping you with geographical coverage and getting it into their stores. But like you said, it's a little bit of a cannibalism thing going on. So it's not always the best call, but in terms of doing it in terms of like European or Canadian or Mexican or Japanese, you know, distribution, that can make a huge difference, you know, for any band really, because now they're able to, you're able to circumvent like having to pay those extra shipping fees or like tariffs and all that stuff. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the benefit of it. And it's let us partner up with some labels. Like I've been doing a lot with Gunner out of, you know, he's in Europe. And then I've done a couple now with, well, I did one already with SBAM or Spam, and I'm doing another with him soon that we will be announcing shortly. Sweet. That I'm really excited about. And it's just, the idea is basically just to put out music I like. I mean, what it comes down to is every record I put out, even if I sold 0 copies, the main reason I did it is because I wanted this thing on vinyl. And, you know, ideally we would sell a ton of them, but that's just not realistic a lot of the times. And so, especially during this weird COVID year where you have no idea what's happening. So
totally. Yeah. I mean, you know, cause you know, you've been in the game long enough to where you've seen the shift in terms of physical, you know, music, becoming less and less of a priority for people, I think. I mean, there's still plenty of people that are, you know, for lack of a better word, like hardcore collectors. And so they will go ahead and spend the money on the physical item, whether or not it's vinyl or CD or a cassette. And, you know, the price points for vinyl when you're even buying it to manufacture it is pretty high. So it's kind of a risk for most bands to do that as an endeavor. So, you know, what are some ways that you have found through your label to really kind of maximize your selling potential? Like what is it that Say 10 really like has done to really elevate that? And I mean, has it really been successful, you know?
Well, I mean, I would say that up until the last couple of years, like literally 2 years, we'd lost money every year. And I mean, it's never been huge amounts, but I mean, well, one year, I think the most I've ever lost in a year is about $7,000.
Yeah.
Which not a little, but you know, more than I would like to lose, but it just happens. But the last couple of years have been really great. The thing that's helped me the most, honestly, has been Record Store Day and partnering up with Green Jelly a couple times, and we'll be doing that again this year for another reissue for those guys. It's been amazing. It's like, it's just crazy to think that like this band that I liked as a, you know, I mean, I had it on tape in 1992. That I convinced them to let me put it on vinyl for them.
Yeah. I mean, that whole story is really rad. And I remember when I heard about them reissuing it and it was you being like the one involved, I was like, that's fucking rad, because fuck, dude, Green Jelly, I had that CD when I was a kid, you know, in high school. I remember being like so stoked on it. And, you know, obviously years pass and I, you know, I didn't really forget about them, but you know, they weren't really someone that I was listening to often. But then when I heard that you were reissuing it on vinyl, I was like, that's fucking cool, man. Because like, shit, talk about like iconic, like 90s kind of just like crazy, weird, like rock, you know, almost like Gwar, you know, but like sometimes even cooler than Gwar. So I don't know. Like,
and that was really it. I mean, like that for me it was awesome. It just felt really good because it was something that I loved as a kid. So I had extreme nostalgic nostalgic feels for. Like it felt good. And then the fact that we sold them fast, everyone was excited, the band was happy, and I've been paying them consistently. Like I've paid them more than any other band I've worked with because we've been selling more, you know what I mean? And it's just been going really smoothly. And then the other thing you mentioned for this year, at least, is you did mention Will Wood, and we did so well with his normal album, or the normal album by Will Wood, that now we're reissuing all of his back catalog. I mean, I've been a fan for years. Tom Petta from Bigwig actually told me about Willwood a long time ago, and it just so happened that we were able to sync up and put that album out this year, and it's been phenomenal. I mean, his online presence is one of the best I've ever seen. It's I mean, he basically lives off of Patreon and making art and making songs and like doing things like that for his fans. And it's just, I've never worked with somebody that is that, like, he's really sure of himself and he's great at what he's doing. And it's a good feeling because like you brought up the cost of records earlier, and I had a hard time raising the price of my records back in the day to $12 at one point in time, because I was like, no one's gonna buy a record for $12. We should keep them as $10. And it was like this hard thing for me to get over. And so, like, putting out his record, like, he's really good at knowing what his stuff is worth and like talking about it more. And like, he's pushed me outside my comfort zone a couple times, but it's worked out really well. And it's something that I love the way he thinks, and I love his music, and I just hope that he can become a household name one day.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the whole Patreon thing. It's an interesting conversation to have with musicians or artists of any kind, where if you're trying to make a living doing your art, you have to know and you have to learn how to sell it, right? And that is not always easy, and it's not always something that people are very good at, and it's something that you can learn, but I think sometimes you just have to have that confidence level of just getting it out there, not being afraid to tell people, listen, like, I'm creating this shit, this is what it's worth. You should buy it, and, the Patreon thing is an interesting animal because, if you're somebody that does create a lot of art, or, if you have a lot of output, it's strange to me, like, how you value some of that. Like an album is traditionally worth, between, I don't know, $8 and $25, depending on what format it's on. Right. So, if you're creating like singles, or if you're creating videos, or if you're creating like how-to videos, or maybe you're doing something where you're doing like handwritten notes or something like that, like, what do you value that at? And like, as a musician, like, do you feel comfortable going those other directions with like your content? Right. So like with Patreon, I feel like with some of these people, like, they have to expand what it is that they are doing to get that money coming in,
Yeah.
because, not everyone is going to be interested in only, getting a new single every once in a while and paying $5 a month for it or something. But, for some people it works. I mean, shoot, like, what was it? Amanda Palmer was like one of the first ones to really like hit it big with that whole thing. And I mean, she was breaking like records with that stuff,
Well, yeah, she did her Kickstarter or Indiegogo or whatever she did, made like something over $1 million.
Yeah. Like some insane amount of money. Yeah. And she was, I remember she got into a lot of trouble for it because people were like you're begging people. And personally, I don't see it that way. Like, I've had at length conversations with people about this, about like the whole social, like, crowdfunding thing. And like, is it okay to do, or is it not okay to do? And my own opinion, I think it's totally fine to do it. What I think people get in trouble with it for is when they do it in a way that isn't sincere, and when it's asking for money for something that kind of inherently should be your own responsibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there were a few bands I remember, like, I'm trying to remember which band it was, but there was this one band that I remember got a lot of heat because they were like, we're trying to buy a new van. And it's like, all right, dude, like, you should just go and buy a van. Like,
You just save up money and do what you do.
yeah, like I get it. You're a musician and you're trying to do it. That's fine. But, we're not going to buy your van for you. Like, I think that's where the line gets crossed, where you just have to be like, well, it's, I'm not just going to give you money so that you can have a van. I'd I'd give you money for a record, you know, like I'd gladly do that. But or if you're going in to produce a record and you need money for like the studio, like I might be willing to give you some money for that, you know, as long as I'm getting the record for it, you know. And I think that a lot of bands treat them as like pre-orders now, basically. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, that's what I feel. If it's on like a pre-order, if it's on like you're getting this for your money, it makes a lot more sense as opposed to, oh, we want to go on tour. Okay, and
yeah,
I would like to go on tour.
Like, so go on tour. Yeah, like people do it all the time.
Yeah, and the only thing I've ever done for crowdsourcing, like that I've set up myself, was I did one when the Riot Before broke up. I had plans to do their double album for them, and it's really hard to do that for a band that just broke up.
Right.
So, you know, we basically set it up to raise the majority of the money to press the double LP for them, it was all their early year stuff, but it was still just, you know, 22 songs so you had to put it on a double LP, and it just cost way more than it should have, because that's just the way that stuff works.
Right. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Well, I mean, it makes sense because of the material cost and everything, but going from a single LP to a double LP is substantially more money. So, like for anyone out there who's thinking about pressing a double LP, you might want to reconsider. Like maybe split it up into 2 releases and get more bang for your buck. Yeah. But I mean, it looks nice, and it's nice to like sell, like somebody's like, here's all this money, or here's all this music, and like give me $25. But even the price point you have to give it at is like so high, you know, to really make it worth it. But so you guys do skateboards too.
And we do. That's like, if you look,
yeah, I see all those decks, and like, you know, I've seen plenty of them that you've released. And so the idea behind that is that you basically just take either some sort of unique artwork associated with an artist or a band, and you do like a limited number of these skateboard decks, right?
For the most part. I mean, okay, so sometimes it has to do with their album artwork or something like that. A lot of the times, what I love doing is partnering up with friends that make art and saying, hey, you make art. If you give me a design from this band who wants to do a skateboard already, once we get a design approved from this band, I will then pay you for the design that we've done. And so it allows me to help my friends out. It allows me to make something that's limited edition for a band that I love. I mean, I wouldn't do it for any of the bands I didn't like, because that just defeats the purpose. And then it makes it so I can then pay the band a little bit or give them copies, and then everyone kind of wins in the process.
Right. Yeah. Well, and would you say that most people are buying them as like decorative pieces, or do you think that some people actually are buying them to actually ride? Yeah.
Few people buy them to ride them.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be the case. Yeah.
And I see both sides of it. It's somebody who I know from Canada recently let me know that they bought the Hello Rockview skateboard I made for Less Than Jake for $300.
Wow.
And I sold it for 40.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I get it. So I understand why people are holding on to them, because certain things go up in value. Or like the one I made for the Alkaline Trio, that one a couple weeks after we sold out of them was selling for $200 on eBay.
Right.
And it's just stuff like that where I figured out a better thing where I had to raise the price a little bit, because I was literally losing money on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But what I figured out is that if I can give the bands more money and I raise the price a little bit, and then it makes it so everyone wins. But it doesn't necessarily help with the scalping side of things or the people that are, you know, reselling. But I just hope that the people that get them love them. My idea is to basically just, I mean, everyone that I make, I have at least one on my walls. Mm-hmm. I like it as art. I don't skate anymore because I'm just too old and I feel like I'll fall apart. But I encourage people to skate them, because if you think about it like that, it's destroying limited edition art, and it's even better.
Right. Yeah. 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 As a concept, that's kind of a neat idea. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you have any new skate decks that you're going to be releasing into the new year? I mean, you don't have to announce them right now, but I mean, are you planning on continuing that, or is that something?
Oh yeah. I mean, the next couple, like I am partnering up with the Fest to do, I've been talking to Tony about using some of the older Fest iconic imagery that they've used. And, you know, for like the Fest posters and all the stuff and so we're going to do a couple for them, or at least one for them to start with. And then the next one we're going to start manufacturing on soon is we're doing one for Naked Raygun.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And I love them. And then I've been bugging the guys in Poison Idea about doing one for a while.
Cool.
So I think we're gonna end up doing one for them soon too. And I I've been trying to get Brandon Kelly. Wow, that's that one. Brandon Kelly to do one. I've been talking to him for a while, and we've done 3 for the Lawrence Arms already. So I really want to do another one for those guys, and I want to do one for the Falcon eventually. And I just love everything he does. So
Yeah.
it'd be awesome.
Are there any in particular that you like, I guess, are more fond of, like any of them that you think are like the best one that you've put out, or like, I mean, you don't have to like necessarily pick favorites or anything, but is there one that you like the best? Yeah.
I mean, I really like the designs that my friend Luke does for me, and I haven't used his art in a while, but he did the Teenage Bottle Rocket design for me, and that's one of my favorite designs on a skateboard that we have. And then Adam Davis drew the Lagwagon Duh Kid much older for me, and I still have the original.
Rad.
But it's something that that was one of my favorite skateboards too, because Lagwagon just it brings me back to just like a childhood nostalgic feel. It's very similar to what I was saying earlier about the green jelly stuff, but it's like that kind of, it just reminds me of that time period in life.
Well, and Lagwagon in particular is like so like affiliated with like the skate punk sound, like it kind of makes a lot of sense for like for them to have one of the decks, but
exactly.
Go ahead.
I said they'd never had a skateboard before either when I made those.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, and out of curiosity, I mean, is this just something where you reach out to the band and say, hey, like I want to do this. Do I have your permission to like use your logo or something like that? And then like you license it from them or something?
To a degree, yeah. And it's like same thing with the records. I don't really do contracts. I just do everything via email. Because then if anyone ever tries to get litigious or anything weird, I could be like, no, here's your email that tells me what I could do.
Right.
But it's the same kind of thing where it's like with Lagwagon, I want to do more for them, but I know they've had some bigger skateboard companies get a hold of them after we did a couple for them. And that's awesome. I mean, I want everyone to make the most that they can for doing what they do.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And like you mentioned earlier, because I'm of the same ilk where it's like, I don't do my record label to try to become like the next Epitaph Records, like I'm not trying to, make this my business. It would be kind of cool if that could be the case, but I also feel like it's a little bit bigger of an animal that I'm willing to kind of tame, like I just enjoy doing it. I think it's fun, and I like to put out music that I like, and it's a good hobby, and I'm helping bands that I like see their music, get their music out and see the light of day.
No, agreed 100%. And I think like I've worked at a couple record labels. Like I worked in 2000, I worked at a place called Fast Music in New York City.
Sure. Yeah.
And I worked there until that went out of business, unfortunately. And then I lived in Baltimore, and I worked at a record company called Morpheus Distribution Records. And I worked there for a while, and then I had a record store myself. And it's scary whenever you're relying on yourself to make all your money. It's a burden that that people don't necessarily think about. And for me now, if I could find a way to get healthcare affordably, I might consider trying to do it full time or figuring out a way to do it full time. But until you can figure that part out, it's hard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, shoot, the whole healthcare thing is such a, we don't have to talk about that. But yeah, so what have you got kind of planned going into this next year? Like, what are some projects that Say 10 has really got moving forward?
Well, immediately happening, starting, it actually comes out next Friday, is a band called Hang Time. They are a newer skate punk band from Canada. The album is actually their most recent 2 EPs. And I was introduced to them online actually, and I heard it and I loved it. And they didn't have anyone in the States working it, so I just hit them up and ended up getting 100 for the US. And so I was really excited about that. The Will Wood reissues, which I mentioned earlier, I'm reissuing. It's sorry, can't speak all of a sudden. He now just goes by Will Wood, and he used to go by Will Wood and the Tapeworms. And we're reissuing all of the old Tapeworm stuff. So it's basically the Everything Is a Lot album. There's an album called Selfish, and then there's the Real Will Wood, which is also an Amazon Prime like mockumentary show performance thing.
Okay.
And so that's all that's on Amazon Prime if you ever get bored. And so those are going to be coming out on CD and LP soon. And then doing basically the Green Jelly album called 333 that came out in, I believe it was 96-ish. I'm going to be putting that on vinyl for the first time. So it's never been on vinyl.
Okay.
The thing I'm really excited about is letting everyone hear the new Bong Mountain album.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Have you heard Bong Mountain? Are you familiar?
I'm familiar with them. I can't say that I've really listened to them at length though. Go ahead.
They're I've been bugging those guys since they first announced they were going into the studio, and I've been a fan for years. I love them, and so when they announced they were going in the studio, I was stoked and I bothered them a lot. And then we finally worked something out where I could put out their next album, and so it's happening this year finally, and I'm beyond excited about it.
Nice.
Then I mean, doing there's a guy called Matt Pless who I did a 7-inch for last year, and I'm doing his new full length. There's a new full length from a band called High Times, which are members of Uber U, and they're the international band that I worked with Gunner with, and I'm excited about that. And then, I mean, it's just a lot of stuff going on. I've been the other thing I'm really excited about, which I mentioned to you before we talked about all this stuff and before we got on the subject, was I'm doing a series of lathe-cut 7-inches,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
they're all limited edition. They're going to be 100% made to order. The idea on it is we put the bands in the studio, they record a couple new songs or a song, and then basically the B side is going to be a cover of a band on the Satan roster.
Okay. Yeah, that's
And
neat.
I'm really excited about it. And then with that, the first 3 are up for sale right now, and it's going to be the Eradicator, a Richmond band called Decide by Friday, who I love, and then another Richmond band, but a band that's been around a little bit longer, is called Pedals on Our Pirate Ships. And they used to be folky punk rock stuff, and the singer's one of my good friends, and he is one of the best singers, like, lyrically, that I've heard in a long time, and I love him. And so basically they're going to be in there, and I want nothing but good things for that band, so I'm excited about it. And then I'm going to be doing it with a lot of other label people, so it's going to be like the band X'd Out that I put out an digital EP for last year. They're members of Ann Bretta and The Bled, and they're going to be coming out with one of these. The band Shot Clock, which is members of Ann Beretta, are going to be doing one. And then Bad Idols from Tennessee are going to be doing one. They're just they're good friends of the label. And then Dead Format, who I did a tape for, is going to do one. And then a band called, basically like a band called Custody is going to be doing one. And I just started getting their recordings all in, so I'm putting it all together now. And I don't know, like I've seen a lot of people selling a single lathe-cut 7-inch for like $20-something.
Right.
That's what I've seen a lot of recently. And so the idea behind the series is to make it affordable, where it's $30 for 3. And it's something where I'm going into it expecting to lose a little bit at first. I'm paying for all the bands to record. Everything's going to come out digitally. So take a step back because my brain's not working. The idea is to put it up for pre-sale. A month later, they'll be live digitally. So this upcoming Friday, everything will be, all 3 of the Pedals on Our Pirate Ships, the Eradicator, and Decide by Friday will be available digitally for people to download and listen to on Spotify and everywhere else. Once Friday hits, at the end of the day, however many we have ordered, that we send it off to get pressed. It takes like 4 to 6 weeks. At that point in time, as soon as we get them back, we send them off to everybody. And the idea is to do this every couple months, and it'll just be extremely limited run. I'm starting with mostly like friends bands and stuff like that, but we are going to be doing more where we're going to have bands like partner up with each other. And I've already, like, the one thing I'm excited about this year is I already have talked to Will Wood and to Matt Pless about doing it, where they're each going to cover each other's songs, and then we'll release them at the same time. So there'll still be a split. There'll still be like a single for each band, but they'll have a cover of each other's songs on there.
Yeah, I love that concept. Like, I love that idea of like having something be, limited batch, made to order, so to speak. And especially like the idea of having bands kind of collaborate on each other's material. Like, I mean, I don't know how I've mentioned this a few times before, like that whole BYO series of LPs that came out, like where bands were covering each other. I thought those were great.
Yeah. No, I agree. I love BYO split series. It was one of the best series that I mean, like, I love splits in general. Like, I love split LPs. I like split 7-inches. That stuff just makes me happy. But no, BYO was one of the best.
Yeah, the NoFX and Ranted one is like classic, Yeah, and then like Hot Water Music and Alkaline Trio. I mean, shoot, like so many good ones out there. Well, that's killer, man. I mean, I'm excited for all the things that you've got rolling out, and it's great to hear that you've been able to do this label for as long as you have, and like continued to do it. When, I mean, you even admit it's like, it's not like you're making really money. You're losing money half the time. And, for a lot of people, they would have thrown in the towel like a long time ago. So to see that you're still doing it and you're doing it with like the full intention of continuing to do it is really cool to hear. So I'm glad.
Well,
And
oh, sorry.
go ahead. No, go
I'll say
ahead.
for me, it's more or less like it's the one thing that keeps my brain balanced.
Sure.
Like the music, I mean, not just new music, but just music in general has always helped. Like it helps with your mood, it helps with your attitude, it helps with things that are going on around you. And I think a lot of us got into punk music because life wasn't always perfect. There's always like shit happens or weird stuff around us, and it's something that we cling on to it because it is the family you choose. And I mean, for lack of sounding too cliche, it is something that we all grew up with it, and it's something that it impacts us all differently, and we've learned how to grow with it. And so for me, the label is just what makes my brain stay somewhat sane.
Sure. Yeah. And I like to think of it too as like a way to help document things, because, it's not like these bands that I work with couldn't just do this themselves. Cause, none of the stuff that I do for the bands is well and above like what they're able to do on their own. But, me being there to kind of help in whatever way is beneficial to them. But it also kind of gives me an opportunity to aid in that documentation to a degree, and to hopefully, help establish more of an audience for people to, hear these bands and like, understand that like, hey, there's lots of good music out there. So even so for instance, people that listen to this band may never have the opportunity to hear of this other band, but because they're affiliated with my label, now they will, so it kind of helps to expand people's audiences a little bit, when naturally that may not happen the same way. So, yeah.
No, I mean, I agree completely. I think of it as, like you said, like a chronicling or a documentation of things. And I just think of it as a partnership. I think of it as like I mean, I've said, and you've said now a couple times, it's like, there's no money to be made on this side of things. No one's going into this and like, there's no like Mr. Burns-esque thing where somebody's like, I'm going to be rich. And like, I tell everyone the same thing, where if you're going into it to make money or even to retain your money, just save your money. Don't be in a band. Don't start a record label. Don't go down that road. You're not going down that road to make money. Like,
Right.
and the people that still do it after 10, 15, 20 years are the people that are going to keep doing it forever. Like this is essentially my child. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what I will do for the rest of my life.
Right. I mean, I think of a person like Mike Park, right, who runs Asian Man Records, and he was very fortunate in that like he had a number of bands that did do pretty well, and I mean the most notable one would be Alkaline Trio, where they took off and like became this thing that people were like, fuck Alkaline Trio, like this is awesome. And they went on and did Vagrant, and then I think they did Epitaph for an album or two or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for him, he got to reap the rewards of that, having been affiliated with them. And, the sales from that, I think, helped continue Asian Man, and allows him to put out other music for bands that may never see the same level as Alkaline Trio, but
No.
at least it gives him a cushion to work on it, and, it allows him to focus on the label, and like, that's his job. And he's been able to do that. And it doesn't hurt that he was also in Skank and Pickle, and, does like, the, like the Chinkies and like the Bruce Lee band and everything too. But no, I mean, if you're lucky, you'll have a band that really strikes a chord and like, sells a lot of units and like maybe moves you to another degree. But the likelihood of that is probably pretty slim. And, you have to keep that in mind when you're doing this, is that, you're doing this because you want to do it, because you love to do it. And, at the end of the day, as long as you break even, I think that you're good, and even if you don't break even, still you're doing it because you love to do it.
Exactly. And on that note, I tell everyone the same thing, which is that if you're starting anything like this, go into it expecting to lose every dollar you put into it. Because if you do that, if I sell one record, I get excited. I'm like, I just made $12 or I just made $15. Like, it feels so much better when you're expecting to lose it all than it does when you're trying to like look at this amount you have to make back. Because if you're counting
Right.
it like that, you're just going to be disappointed in everything. And it's like, until you get to that point, it's going to feel like you're just losing. And like, I don't know. I don't know how people exist like that. I have to focus on the positive, or otherwise I'm just going to be sad all day.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up. Yeah, that And I mean, I know that I've mentioned this a few times, is like, you know, I try to talk to bands and I try to mention to them, it's like, you have to reassess what your idea of what success looks like, you know. And sometimes success looks like literally selling one record at a time and
Yep.
just being really happy about that. So, but you know, that's great, man. And like, you know, I wanted to move on to like the last couple of questions that I have. So, you know, I ask everyone these same questions. Who are some bands that you're aware of and that you really like, that you think a lot of people may not be aware of, that you'd really like to maybe just give a quick shout out to, and you know, I'll provide links for them below.
Of course. I mean, I would pick two right off the bat, and they're not bands on the label, but I wish they were. And I've told both bands this, that I would put out their records immediately if they would let me. The first one is probably one of the most important bands making music right now, in my opinion, is a band called the Muslims.
Oh.
Which, if you haven't heard them, they are phenomenal. It's all non-white folks. It's all, I mean, I don't know the genders behind everyone, so I don't want to misgender anyone, but I know they identify as queer, and it's something that I've been listening to their albums since I've been introduced to them, and I've listened to it nonstop. And I know as like the older cis het white dude that I'm not exactly who they're speaking to, but I think that they are one of the most important bands making music right now. And I stand behind it. Like, that album was my number one album of last year. I wish I had put it out. I have told them that at least 10 times. So much so that they don't even reply to my emails because I want to put it out so bad. But
Where
no, I
are they
just love
from?
them. They're from North Carolina.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've never heard of them.
And
yeah.
strongly recommend them. I seriously, like, I can't stress it enough. I love that album.
Cool.
It's
I will
the
check it
last
out
album they put out was Gentrified Chicken. It's so good.
Okay. I will definitely check it out.
And
Yeah.
then,
Who else you got?
the other one is a band. They're from Colorado. They're called Cheap Perfume.
Okay.
They, again, it's something that just reminds me of a certain time and a place. It's something that they have a Bikini Kill-esque vibe. Very, I mean, I don't want to say they sound a lot like Kathleen Hanna, but I love Kathleen Hanna, so that's not a bad thing. And I was introduced to them actually probably about 2 months ago. And immediately I was like, hey, I want to put out your albums. Let me email you. Please let me put out your albums. And they were like, well, we already put out our albums. And I was like, okay, but let me put out your albums. Like, and the other one I will say, that, not trying to take anything off your plate, but I mean, I love the Middle Age Queers album you put out. I stand by that album. That's so good.
Yeah. I'm really stoked that you say that, because to be really honest with you, man, like, I really, really love that band, and I love everything they're doing. I think that it's such a breath of fresh air, you know, amongst a lot of like this very, I mean, I hate to say, but like a lot of serious, you know, kind of punk rock, you know, that's out there. I mean, these guys, I mean, I've known Sean for a very long time, and, you know, I knew some of the bands that he had been in prior to being in this band. And, you know, it was just so cool to be able to be a part of them releasing this record. So I was like, dude, this is like so fun. It's just a fun record, you know? And I mean, when you write a song about a cat doing the making biscuits thing, and it's just this, the earworm of the year, and you're just like, Jesus, dude, this is awesome. And, you know, it reminds me so much of like a lot of like the punk rock that I used to love when I was just a little kid, you know, when I was first learning about it. Because what's ironic about that, when I say that, is that, you know, some of the first punk rock that I got introduced to and really got into was like Fugazi and like Dead Kennedys, which is like definitely very serious punk rock, right? But then you kind of open your mind a little bit, and you get introduced to like all these other bands like Screeching Weasel and like, you know, Pansy Division and like Green Day. It's a little bit more like, you know, tongue in cheek, like whatever. And then that kind of, you know, expands your worldview to that stuff. And then it kind of reminds me of that stuff, which is like, yeah, it's just lighthearted. It's just fun. It's just fun to listen to. But I'm really glad you dig it, and I'm sure that they'll love to hear that too. You know.
Yeah, no, that was seriously, that album blew me away. And the only thing that I was bummed about was it was only a 10-inch. That was like the only thing I was bummed about. I wish there was more songs.
Yeah, I know that they have plans to release some new stuff this year, so we're looking forward to that. And it looks like we're probably going to work with them too. So that
awesome.
Keep my fingers crossed on that. But yeah, that's killer, man. Yeah, I did have a question I wanted to kind of piggyback on. You mentioned bands like releasing stuff that had already been released.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's something that I'm always kind of, sometimes weary about, because when a band releases the stuff like maybe on their own, and then you find out about them and you're like, oh, like, man, I think we should release this like on physical format. Like, it's, I don't know, sometimes it feels like it's tougher to really sell it. You know what I mean? Because it's already been released. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I agree with what you just said. It is tougher. It definitely detracts from the numbers if you're trying to count things and sell things, but it depends on what it is. Like, I mean, I think that certain things just need to exist, and this is going to sound stupid, and I realize that before it comes out of my mouth, but I I don't mind going into it thinking I'm going to lose a couple $1,000s to put out something that I think needs to exist on vinyl. Like, and it's just a matter of, if I go into it thinking like that, I'm not going to be let down if I lose a couple $1,000s, and that's just the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? Like, then I'm like, okay.
Sure. Well, and I think that this last year in particular was a whole different animal to work with, and in that we didn't have live shows, we didn't have the opportunity to like set up a booth at like a record swap or something like that, and we didn't have the opportunity to really like try to get music into the hands of people in like person, and the unfortunate downside of the internet being working the way it does, and like social media in particular, is that the mechanisms that we have to get things in front of people are 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 getting tougher and tougher to really utilize effectively. And it's like there can be like a million groups on Facebook that you could like send a post about like this band or this band or this band, and it still doesn't necessarily mean that that many people are going to see it, or that they're going to interact with it, because of all the white noise that goes on. So
I think social media. Oh, sorry. I mean,
no,
I was say that.
Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
I would say social media also, the way that they've changed the algorithms just in the last 6 months to a year has been awful. And I don't know about you, but like, I was looking through it the other day, just comparing. I can post something on Instagram and Facebook at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And my Facebook one, if I don't put an ad on it, 100 people will see it, and it'll have 3 likes.
Yep.
With that being said, I have less followers on Instagram, but I'll post the exact same thing on Instagram. No ads, nothing like that. And it'll have 100+ likes with 10 comments.
Yep.
And it just makes zero sense. It's not designed to help right now like it used to.
Yeah. It definitely feels like, especially Facebook and Instagram is very close behind this. Because I mean, they're birds of a feather. It feels like Facebook has definitely shifted to more of like we want your money, and we're going to get your money, or else you can't use us, basically, and for a while there, it felt like you could really leverage it as a good tool to expose, your stuff to like a new audience or something like that. But it's gotten a lot harder to do it. I know a lot of people are shifting to TikTok now, and they're trying to leverage TikTok because it doesn't have like nearly as like restricting as an algorithm. Because really, it's like if you have something that's funny and people like it, and then it just explodes, and then all of a sudden you're in front of like a million people, But,
yeah, I haven't got on there yet. I don't really do a lot of video stuff, so it's a matter of like, I'm like, I don't know how to do this, and now I'm old. So
I've been flirting with it a little bit, and it's certainly not as easy as it looks, to try to like get something to like get in front of people, because from what I've seen, when you do have something that does not get much engagement, it doesn't get any, so they squash it pretty quickly, I think, at
it just falls flat.
But I do think, though, that based off of what I've seen, is that it's pretty much fair game. Like if you put something on there and it does strike a chord, it will blow up, versus, it just automatically being throttled like what it is at Facebook now,
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I digress. I appreciate your input on that. So the last question that I have for you, and I ask this of everyone, is like, if you had to be stuck with 5 albums to be the go-to albums for the rest of your life, what would they be?
And this would probably change daily for me. So it's something that these are from today. My brain's here.
Totally fair. Yeah.
But the first one would be honestly the Riot Before His Fists Buried in Pockets album. It's the first band I signed on this label. It was, I mean, I'd been working in music for a while at that point in time, but they basically just energized me and got me reinvested in punk rock essentially. And so that album still holds a good spot for me, and I'll listen to it all the time.
Sweet.
The other ones are things I did not put out, but most of them are from, it looks like early to mid 90s till early 2000s in no particular order. Rocket from the Crypt, Scream Dracula Scream, such a great album.
Great
Can
record.
listen to it constantly. Sick of It All is Call to Arms.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite albums on Fat Records, which sounds nothing like a Fat Records album. Another album from Fat that does sound like a Fat album, though, is Lagwagon's Hoss. That album reminds me of being, I want to say 16-ish, and just the people that I was around at the time, and just fun. And then the similar time period, more of the breakup album from that time period was the last album from my list would be Knapsacks. This Conversation Is Ending, Starting Right Now.
Sweet.
It's such a good album. And when his next band, when the Jealous Sound got back together, I actually flew out to the Bay Area to watch them when Great Apes opened up for them.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
And that was it was also when I met the guys in Great Apes and decided to put out their first 7-inch.
I think I was at that show. Was it at Bottom of the Hill?
It was.
Yeah, I believe I was at that show. Yeah.
That was a great show.
Yeah, the memory is getting harder to retain, but I'm pretty confident I was at that show. Yeah. No, that's a great list, man. I mean, Lagwagon's like near and dear to me. And Hoss is interestingly enough like an album that I honestly have not listened to much of, but like, Double Platinum, Trashed, obviously. And like even like the newer one, Railer, dude, Railer's great. Yeah.
I mean, I think everything they've done is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But I think like Hoss from start to finish just reminds me of like that time period. I don't know why. From like The Kids Don't Like to Share and like all the songs off that album, just it still hits hard. I can listen to it constantly.
Yeah, no, Lagwagon's a great band. They're certainly deserving of like all the accolades that they get. Knapsack is a band that like I didn't really get really into, but I love the Jealous Sound, and Racket Club was really cool too. I got to see them. Like everything that Blair does is pretty great. But no, thanks for sharing your list. I appreciate it. I'm like you, like my top 5 like kind of shifts all the time. Like probably the only real constants for me are like probably Fugazi and Smashing Pumpkins. One album from them and everything else is like a rotating cast. But Adam, I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for being on the show, and I hope that this year brings a lot of success for you, and that once we get back to normal, we can meet up in real life, hopefully maybe at Fest, if we're able to pull it off.
That's the plan. I mean, I'm excited about the possibilities. I'm hoping that this year we get back to some semblance of normal.
Sounds good, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Yep.
Kinda wanted to. I'm cut from a different kind of me. Mother, you kids, you had to swallow me. Forget positive, I can make a more just kind of more big curiosity. How I can commit to reality with my third eyes open and I like what I see, baby. I may be crazy, but I didn't lose it, no, I set it free. I can't ignore what's on the dance floor. More the rhythm of my heart and then it's disturbed me, but I still move my feet to slip out of this groove I feel. Now to roll my boat over the falls. Psycho babe, Some days I'm glad that